Buenas noches, good evening. My name is Sheila Velez Martinez. I'm the director of the Center for Civil Rights and Restorative Justice. And it's our great pleasure and honor to co-host this panel today. This is the second iteration of this event. We did this event 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago. And I wish we were in a better place than we are today. That was not the idea when we organized it for this day. But we will, so there's the Puerto Rican, I'm from Puerto Rico, so Puerto Rican national poet, his name is Juan Antonio Correger, and what he said in a beautiful poem is that la vida es lucha toda hasta conseguir la libertad ansiada. So life is all struggle until you reach your desired freedom. So this is what we're doing. We are continuing to do what we have been doing for many years, while these wonderful women have been doing for most of their professional lives. We continue to do what we do best, which is struggle. I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Amy Raslevic. Dr. Raslevic is a woman that I've known with many hats, volunteer coach, basketball mom, baseball mom, volleyball coach, but also through 30 years of activism for health equity. She has a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health, where she was a Pitt Health Justice Scholar, and she has a bachelor's degree from Duke University.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody, and just so anybody knows who has interior hair, supposedly the room will fill up, so there may be people climbing over you to get to the chair. So just to set sort of, we all know what happened on Tuesday, but there were also 10 abortion ballot initiatives that were on the ballots on Tuesday. 7 of those succeeded, including in Arizona, Colorado, Maryland, Missouri, with almost 60%, Montana, 6%, Nevada, and New York. There were 3 that failed, 1 in South Dakota, 1 in Florida, because they set the precedent, and 1 in Nebraska, where they also ran a competing measure of abortion rates. In these states, between 20 and 35% of the people who voted to protect abortion rights also voted for. That was sort of an interesting outcome. In fact, only 3% of Trump voters said abortion was required, but 4% overall of Republicans said so. The exit polls show there's about a 10-point difference between men and women on how they voted on this. Black and Hispanic voters were significantly more than white voters vote and say that abortion was the single most important issue to them or had a major impact on whether they voted in for them. Same held true for younger voters, first-time voters. So overall, 25% of voters said abortion was the most important thing to them. That's about the same as in 2020. 43% said it motivated them to vote, which is up. 56% said it impacted which candidate they supported, also up. Yet, top issues were the future of democracy, high prices, future of free speech, U.S.-Mexican border, are all more important voters in this election overall than abortion rate. And obviously the parties again, economy and border situation. So as Shayla mentioned, we have been fighting this fight for a very long time. It got harder, but I would say that probably no one in this room is backing down. I want to introduce first Sue Fritsch, who's the executive director, legal director of the Women's Law Project. Joined the project staff in 1992 and founded the Western Pennsylvania office in 2002. He's an adjunct professor at Pitt School of Law and co-author of Preserving the Poor of Roe, question on Planned Parenthood versus Casey was on the other side of the argument. Greer Donnelly is now the chair of the Women's Law Project Board and Pitt Law's Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Development. He's an advocate and author of numerous articles on reproductive health and rights. helped design, draft, and pass the first abortion shield law in Connecticut, which has now been copied and passed in other states. Further helped to draft a citizen petition to the FDA to add miscarriage management to mifepristone label, as well as an amicus brief in the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus the FDA case, and her scholarship was cited in the dissent. Sinceri is a grassroots activist and organizer, storyteller, with National Planned Parenthood and a member of both the Abortion Defense Committee and attorney. She's director of abortion care at the Allegheny Reproductive Center, as well as community engagement member and a board member of Western Pennsylvania for Choice. And Colby Bell is a counselor, also at ARHC, community engagement member. She is an MSW student. And a volunteer member of the Western Pennsylvania Fund for Choice. I wanted to introduce them briefly. We're gonna generally talk about three major questions and dive into audience questions as well as some issues of intersectionality. We're gonna talk about the current legal landscape at both federal and state levels, where people can go for advocacy assistance, how we continue to create spaces for community building and sharing, and how people can engage on this issue. Does anybody want to start? Who's going to take federal legal position?
I'm happy to. Hi, everyone. So first of all, I mean, shocking attendance for a Friday night. Thank you all for being here. I know that it's always hard. It's always good in moments that are hard to be together. And so I'm really honored to be with these incredible panelists to talk about this issue that has never been more important, right? So I'll start a little bit with just, the national landscape. This is the basics that you all know, right? Which is that until 2.5 years ago, we had a national right to pre-viability abortion, right? It was never true that there was a national right to abortion writ large. It was a limited right, only to abortion through viability, which was roughly 24 weeks. And it wasn't unlimited. I mean, we all knew from the pre-Dobbs era that states had done an incredible job of chipping away at the right, to the point where in many states there were abortion deserts, and 6 states right before Dobbs only had 1 clinic left in them. It was very hard for people to access abortion care, even when it was legal. And that's particularly true for poor women and women of color, which are 75% of abortion patients. So that was, but of course, then Dobbs happened, right? Making a bad situation worse, abolishing the right to abortion, the limited right to abortion, and quote, returning the law to the states. Up until this election, we had roughly, a half of the country, a little bit less than half of the country has successfully passed a pre-viability abortion ban. It's more like a third if you're only talking about bans that are from conception or 6 weeks, like really early bans. There's a handful of states in there that start banning abortion at 12 weeks, 15 weeks, 18 weeks. Roughly half the country, though, decided to ban some abortion before viability, to make it harder to get abortion than it was before, with Roe on the books, essentially. So, of course, that doesn't mean that the federal government doesn't have levers to push, right? So we saw the Biden administration come in over the last few years and try to do what it could, and it did important stuff. What did it do? Well, it made it easier to access mifepristone by getting rid of some of the unnecessary regulations that had made it hard to access, that were never medically necessary. It used a federal statute known as EMTALA to try to make it harder for states to ban medically necessary abortions, right? Shocking that we have to stop states from banning medically necessary abortions, but that's one of the things Biden was trying to do. It made it so that VA hospitals could provide abortion care in rare circumstances. It passed a HIPAA rule that made it so people who traveled from Texas to New York to get abortion care, their medical records would be protected. Right. So we saw the Biden administration try to do what they could on the margins. So I guess I'll just conclude this opening statement with a note about where we're going, which is to say that Trump was elected. People like me and all of these people on the panel have been, raising the alarm bells for months in the media, locally, grassroots, as much as we can to say this. There's a parade of horribles that could come under that outcome. We don't know what that parade is going to look like yet, right? Because as Sue just said, we're not in control. We're not in control here. But here are the types of things that we should be worried about. The media likes to focus a ton on the possibility that they're going to pass a new federal ban. I think that's possible, but that's low on the list of things I'm worried about. Why? Because they don't have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Right? Remember my leg rise students. I see so many of you here. So glad you're here. Remember the filibuster. We talk about it. We debate it. We talk about how annoying it is. Should it exist at all? This is why you might like it. Because it ensures that just because there's a transfer of power, that it's hard to pass laws, right? It's the thing that frustrates people, but there's another flip side to that coin. Will the Republicans abolish the filibuster to pass a national abortion ban? Maybe. But I think that's less likely. Why? Because they think they have a national abortion ban already on the books in the form of the Comstock Act, right? There's a law passed in 1873 that made it illegal to use interstate commerce to ship products related to abortion, both pills and articles. Theoretically, the most aggressive interpretation of the statute already creates a national abortion ban on the books, just ready for an anti-abortion DOJ head attorney general to come and force against providers. Now, I've been shocked and wrong a lot, about kind of how aggressive the anti-abortion movement will be, but I would imagine that they'll start small, right? That they'll go after shield providers. Happy to talk about that more in the Q&A. Happy to go after, they're going to go after telehealth first before they use it in a way to totally ban all types of abortion nationwide. But it's a real threat. The fact that we're even talking about that should terrify everyone in this room. The FDA, almost certainly this is going to be the one thing I'm guaranteed, I feel extremely confident is going to happen is an anti-abortion commissioner of the FDA is going to come in and try to do whatever they can to make it harder to access mifepristone, the first drug in a medication abortion. We'll have to see how the courts are willing to grapple with that completely medically unsound decision by a scientific agency. Of course, all the other things I just talked about, the HIPAA rule, the VA, EMTALA, all that stuff is going to go away too. So that's the national landscape. Now and I'm happy to talk about this more in Q&A. I don't want to take up any more time. I will say that there are creative solutions to fight back against every single one of those things, right? We do not have the time or the ability to despair in this moment, right? We have to use our brains to try to do what we can to stop those. But that's what we're looking at and what we're afraid of right now.
Sure. And I loved everything you said, especially the part about how this is not a time to despair. It's a time to be creative. And I also love that you're the chair of the Women's Law Project Board of Trustees. That is just the right attitude coming out of this really horrible week. So much of the law that governs the way abortions are provided is actually already state-based law. So we have the Abortion Control Act, which is a chapter of the Crimes Code in Pennsylvania that has a whole lot of requirements that clinics have to follow in order to provide abortion care. We have many, many statutes and regulations at the state level. And so a lot of our efforts up until this past Tuesday have been aimed at doing something about the more unfair and restrictive state statutes and state regulations. And we've been making really beautiful progress. And if the federal government leaves us alone, we will continue to make really beautiful progress, I think. So the most difficult obstacle to abortion in Pennsylvania is that Medicaid does not cover abortion care. That is the #1 barrier to abortion in Pennsylvania. It is an absolute obstacle to, we think, about 1/4 of low-income people seeking abortion care who rely on Medicaid. And it is extremely difficult for even those who are somehow able to find subsidization or pull together their own funds in order to afford it. In January, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that this state ban on Medicaid coverage of abortion is presumptively unconstitutional under our state Equal Rights Amendment. So we have our own constitution that predated the federal constitution, is better than the federal constitution, is independent of the federal constitution, and that has been extremely underdeveloped over the eons. People just didn't bring a lot of litigation in state court. So we have an Equal Rights Amendment that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. There was a court decision in the mid-'80s that said that doesn't apply to abortion. Abortion's different. Men and women are different. If you're talking about differences that are based on men and women, this extremely binary concept of men and women, then you can treat them different because after all, they are different, aren't they? So in January, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, by a very narrow 3-2 majority, ruled that that was ridiculous. And that if what the purpose of our Equal Rights Amendment is to stop gender-based discrimination, then you certainly can't carve out a whole exception for sex-linked characteristics like reproductive capacity. So with this ruling, we are now back down at a trial level court in Commonwealth Court, applying a new legal test, which is, in order for the Medicaid coverage ban to be upheld, the government has to prove that they have a compelling interest in not covering abortion care for low-income patients, and that compelling interest, whatever it is, whether it's women's health, which is one of the offered compelling interests, or infant health or fetal well-being, that the only way to advance that interest is by withholding coverage through the Medicaid system. So that is a test that we are very confident the government cannot meet. And in fact, the government has already said that they cannot meet it. We are waiting for a ruling from Commonwealth Court that states the obvious, that the Medicaid coverage ban is a form of sex discrimination and that there is no justification for it and it has to fall. Because we started this in 2019 and it has been just a very long course of litigation. But think about the possibilities there. We are also asking the court to acknowledge that the state constitution guarantees a right to reproductive autonomy and protects it as a fundamental right. So stronger than anything we had under Roe versus Wade. We came one vote away from winning that already back in January, and we think that given another look at it, we may be able to win that now. So there's a lot of potential in our state constitution. What we have to worry about is two things. We have to worry about the federal government, which is supreme, shutting down an independent interpretation of our state constitution. And we have to worry about our state constitution being amended to have our rights amended out from under us. Just today, we got the news that the Pennsylvania House of Representatives will stay majority, barely by 1 vote, Democrat. that means that it will be more difficult for the state legislature to pass a state constitutional amendment stripping out the ERA or putting in an abortion ban into our state constitution. So all of this is just to say there is a path forward. There is a really encouraging path forward, but we will need all kinds of citizen activism at both the federal and the state level to protect the gains that we are only just now starting to see at the state level in Pennsylvania. There is a judicial retention election next year. So a year from now, we will vote on whether the 3 justices who voted the way they did on the Medicaid ban are going to be returned to the state Supreme Court or whether they are going to be kicked out. So that is something that should be on everyone's mind in the coming year. So why don't I stop there?
So we're gonna, before doing that, I want to emphasize not only the people, but also the public health. And remind people that, okay, that one of, the US ranks last, similar economic countries in terms of maternal mortality. And in doing some of the research that I've been doing for a class on health equity, one of the top 10 leading causes of death for women childbearing age in this country. So as we continue to talk about the legal ramifications, also needs for essentially forcing a woman to carry and bear a child puts her life at risk no matter what. Do not do well, especially by poor women and women of health. So I just want to emphasize the public health. But Lee, do you want to introduce?
So we are going to watch a video from the ACLU. And if anybody's a Drag Race fan, you'll recognize Miss Peppermint, but she is their ambassador for transgender justice. I think that the fight for reproductive justice, which includes abortion, also overlaps very strongly with the fight for trans health, trans justice. Trans people have abortions. I'm non-binary. I use, they, them pronouns. I work at the abortion clinic, and we see trans patients all the time. And it's not just women's health. It's anybody that has a uterus can get pregnant and may need an abortion. Abortion can be gender affirming care for a lot of people. So yeah, we wanted to talk about that a little bit as well.
I am Ms. Peppermint, your ACLU ambassador for trans justice, and today I am chatting with We Testify abortion storytellers Kazembe Jackson and Jack Buene about why abortion access is a trans and non-binary issue. Can we start with both of you just telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, I'm glad to be here today. I'm Kazembe Jackson, and I am a Southern Black trans man living in Georgia.
My name is Jack Buene. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a non-binary agender trans person. I'm biracial, and I'm living in Los Angeles at the moment, but originally from Florida.
So for a lot of people who are watching this, they may not be sure how the LGBTQ community is connected to the issue of reproductive justice and specifically abortion. And so it's with that I just want to go right in and ask Kazembe, and then I'll ask you, Jack, to jump in. What has having access to abortion meant in your life?
Well, I was sexually assaulted at college and became pregnant as a result of that. I didn't want to be pregnant. I always say that my abortion saved my life because after I had the abortion, the folks at the clinic, all the rape crisis center, took me over to therapist and a psychiatrist. To this day, that's how I was diagnosed with my mental health issues, and really was able to get my life on track. I do want to be a parent, but it took me time to get to that point. And I think being able to have my abortion is what is actually allowing me to go down the journey of parenthood.
Thank you for sharing that. Jack, what about you? Can you tell us how you came to the decision to have an abortion?
In a lot of ways, I feel like my abortion was almost gender affirming care. I was in a transitional period where I had just come out and in a really bad relationship where the condom broke, I took a plan B, it didn't. And I knew for a long time that I was not going to be somebody that was going to be a parent. It made it pretty easy for me to decide to have an abortion. I just simply wanted one.
Why is it important to see trans and non-binary individuals like yourselves share their abortion stories, and what inspired you to share yours?
I just realized that a lot of the conversations and stories were very, it's all about regret. And how people were regretting their circumstances that led them to choose an abortion, regretting that they had to do that. And I don't regret having an abortion. So I'm going to use my big ass mouth to be very vocal about how this was something that was not a difficult decision. This was something that I genuinely wanted. And in doing so, I get emails from trans people. I get tweets from trans people that are 20 years old, that are teenagers going, I didn't know other trans people had abortions. You made me feel better. You made me feel like I could survive this. You made me feel safe. You made me feel seen.
I feel like I have to tell my story in order for people to realize that we exist, that we are here, that we are serious, and we actually need healthcare too. They don't want us to have control over our body. And that's what all of these issues are about. It's like, this is my body. I have the self-determination to do what I want with it. I'll stop there. I'm getting
That's what it takes. Especially when we're talking about the politicians who are involved, who are trying to limit abortion access and gender-affirming care. Why is it important to talk about these issues as intersectional? Jack, I'll start with you.
It's, I inhabit a lot of identities. Most of the people I interact with inhabit more than one identity. So to put yourself in a box where you just are like one two-dimensional individual, I don't understand how you can have cognitive dissonance to do that. It does a disservice to folks.
There are systems of oppression that have been put in place to keep us from being able to exert power and freedom for ourselves. And we have to destroy those systems of oppression. Jack so eloquently quoted Audre Lorde, and that we don't live single issue life. And she not only did she say we don't live single issue life, but we can't have single issue movements. Our movements can't just be about abortion access. We can't just wear pussy hats. It is about race. It is about housing. It is about schools. It is all these things. It's all connected.
What is your advice, or what would you want to say to another trans or non-binary person? I'll start with that.
I would say fortify yourself. Understand that you might get misgendered. It doesn't make it okay, but be ready for it. Contact abortion funds in your area so that they can help pay for it. And, and ask for other resources. We have the internet, tweet me. I'll point you in the right direction.
I always came to the more emotional side of it. I always tell them that you will survive this. There's life after this. There's healing after this. There's thriving after this.
I'm grateful that you are each doing this type of work, in my opinion, very selflessly, to take care of others in our community, that some of whom you've obviously not ever even met. I'm just so grateful that you are both here to share your stories. It's really important that we are clear that everybody knows that abortion is healthcare. Abortion is a human right, and trans and non-binary individuals and voices belong in all spaces and conversations, including those about reproductive freedom. So thank you so much for sharing your stories, Jack and May. You are just miraculous. Thank you so much.
I want to transition from that.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. Awards.
It's Sophia, who is our storyteller.
So I wrote down
All my thoughts. So, first off, as I was talking with, Emily from Tri-State and Ginny, we need more people. We need more people. And I cannot stress this enough to you. And we get it. We really get it. We're tired. People who work in the clinics, they're tired. So how do we solve this problem? Because it's a problem, okay? Because after Dobbs, what happened was we had this surge, this monumental surge, calling the clinics, calling us. We could not keep it. We were like trying to keep it together. And then 6 months comes, and I don't mean to make anybody feel guilty, because I get it. I've been there. But all of a sudden, it was like plumbing. I used to have so many food volunteers. You know how many I have 2. Okay. Barely, and thank God, those people are like, they come. Our meetings they really consist of, how many think? 5, maybe 4. So I'm not meaning, I'm just gonna lay that out on you. Okay, I'm Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I come from a Catholic background, Italian Catholic, and there's my guilt trip. All right, now I'll move away. Okay, so how do we solve this? Because the thing about in advocacy, all these small steps, like we had a baby fundraiser last Sunday. There were 11 people there. It was one of the most moving and powerful fundraiser, education, knowledge sharing circles that we've had. Okay, and like people walked out going, I heard from a friend of a friend, oh, I went to this thing, and oh my gosh, I knew about abortion, but I didn't know that and why it is all this stuff that they're talking about. It's not just about healthcare. It's about housing security, food security. It's about if a person needs to all of a sudden, like out their perpetrator, all of a sudden, are they going to be unhoused and then they're going to be unsafe? And I mean, like, no, that's not the country we live in, right? There's so much. Like I did mine. I'm so grateful for both of my abortions, and like education. You all are in school right now. What if all of a sudden you got pregnant and had the baby, like some of you, and all of a sudden you had to have a baby? How'd that look? I know I'm paying for a kid to go here. Nice right on my arm in order to do it. So how are you going to raise a baby? How are you going to do that? You can't do it. I had a great education. I went to UCSD. It was great. If I would have had a child, no way. Right? So, okay. So anyway, small steps. Okay. We are all a part of a whole. No one action or person is more important than another. But like everybody up here has a role. Like I'm learning, I'm scribbling down. I'm like, what you all are saying. I'm like, I cannot have enough pages to write down what you all are saying, So like, they are obviously extremely important people. Holly is an extremely important person. Nikki is extremely important. Okay. You all are equally as important. Okay. If you are running food to the clinic, guess what? They don't have to worry about food. They are sustained. They are like, oh wow, we get coffee. They don't have to worry about it. They can just go on with their day. How does it feel when you bring a meal to somebody or when somebody brings a meal to you? Oh, they are taken care of. We have to take care of these people. Okay. First off, also, this is one thing I want to let you all know, and you might not know this because I was one of those people that you call the clinic and you're like, how can I help? Don't do it. Don't do it. Call us, email us, and there's a list of all of the kinds of different things you can do either online or locally. There's Tri-State Abortion Access. That's this group right here. You can come to us. I have all kinds of ideas. You can come to us for the sake of time. We can talk after, but this is what I wanted to give to you. There's also ADC. There's Autobody. I think Autobody's here. I think Scan is here. I think, they're here. Talk to these people. You can escort. You can drive. Okay. You can help me out with food. You can buy meals for the clinic at Square Cafe, at Driftwood, at Butter Butterwood,
Yeah.
And these are all really friendly, wonderful, but they can't keep supplying because like so buy a meal. And I can give you my contacts, let me know. I'll let them know, drop it off, okay? It doesn't have to be massive, it doesn't have to be a grand thing. So anyway, here we go. Okay, so everybody's meaningful, okay, and everything counts. So how do we keep this sustainable so that we don't burn out? Back in 2019, we started this work at Planned Parenthood. I'm just a volunteer at Planned Parenthood. I'm not representing them. But I adore them. But so what we were talking about is how do we keep our advocates from burning out? And also, how do we incorporate advocacy into our regular routine? Because guess what? It is not a choice right now. Okay, you have to do it. Okay. And it's like, it's great that we get to do it. Okay, we get to do that. We are still living in a country where we can say, I don't believe in that. We can go into, oh, I can't wait. I get to go into McCormick's office. I'm so excited, but I have to really not come in hot. So anyway, so anyway, like, how do we do this? So, all right, so here's a couple ideas. Okay. So shifting advocacy from how much can you give and how much are you worth? Like how many, how many doors can you knock and how many phone calls can you make? Or how many this and how many that, how much this and then we get burnt out, right? Instead, what about taking the framework, reframing this and saying, hey, how about we get inspired by the work and the wealth, this whole wealth of healthy connections and focus and support it brings to our life and to others. And how do we do that? We do that through community building, authentic community building. It's not just about going to a group. The people that I'm organizing with right now, they're like my friends, and it brings me to tears, because I adore them. When I had my surgery, the folks at the ADC, they made sure that I had meals. They texted me. Hey, this is my community. Okay, and this is where we are right now. This is what we get to do. And when I say we have to do it, yeah, we have to do it. But then we get to do this. All you need to do is grab your friends. Start a meeting once a month. Okay, and then what you do is you hold each other accountable. Okay, you hold each other accountable for stuff like writing a letter to the editor. Oh God, I never wrote a letter to the editor. Well, you encourage each other. Somebody might be a writer. You encourage them. If you encourage them to tell their story, you research a policy and share it. Or like my friend Emily did with me the other day, I said, after the panel, I'm taking a week break. And I said it sarcastically. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, you are, because we're no good burnt out. Okay. And if we take a week break, it's fine. And this gets me to the next thing is delegation. We are all important. Okay. But somebody can step into our shoes. Okay. It's really crucial to understand that. We're all important, but nobody's a rock star. This is not what we're doing. We're not rock starring it here. Okay. We're a part of the whole. We're moving forward as a whole. Okay. And as long as we understand that, we take that break. Like, I'm going to take that break. I already know what I'm doing with that break. And she's holding me to it. And I have another person who's holding me to it. That's also an organizer. Like, you got to hold me to it. Because I will jump back in. Right? So anyway, step two of this is that I'm going to be real fast here. Step two is that then you have this information. Okay, I did this information. And maybe like what Sue was saying, like maybe you did research on the stuff that Sue was talking about, or Greer was talking about, or Amy was talking about, and you have this information, then what do you do with it? Well, then you say, oh, I'm going to call like here in the area, I'm going to call Tri-State, right? Or I'm going to contact ADC and say, hey, I want to do like a little knowledge sharing session. Okay. So that kind of stuff is so important. Okay. We normally have like 11 people. So this is like, I feel like I'm in an Eras Tour stadium. Because this is like, what the hell's going on? So, I mean, like, but when you have 3 people, 2 people, and you open them up to this stuff. You teach them about Comstock Act and mifepristone and how they could start they could start taking away equipment that's being, shipped across lines. That's pretty, like, okay, it can be scary, but knowledge is power. Somebody at one of our meetings said, what about a 3D printer? I'm like, well, that's a good idea. Like, what about a 3D printer? So we get together in these groups. Does this make sense, or am I rattled? Does it make sense? Okay, good. Okay, because it's all clear in my head. So I'm going to, let me just see here. I got to tell you some good news. Okay, so just really quickly, so just to wrap that up. So go to Tri-State, like right here, you can come to Tri-State or ADC. Okay, like call us. Nikki and I and Colby, we're working on doing little fundraisers, knowledge things, storytelling sessions. As often as we can. We already have a space, which is great. So I recommend that if you guys have spaces, you're already 90% of the games. That's it. Okay. And food. You might laugh, but food. Jenny always supplies food. Okay. And a kick-ass salad. Okay, so that gets me there. So anyway, so then you come to us, then you do that. If you guys are having an event, let everybody know. There's a whole list of people over there. I do believe that you guys have a blog or somewhere that you could share. So do you have social media that we?
Yeah, we have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
So can we contact that or say on there? Could somebody? So
You can always message us. The fund for the Western PA Fund for Choice, Colby and I run that. The clinic one, I think Noah, you have access.
Yeah, I have access to the Instagram and the Facebook.
So if somebody contacts you, said, hey, we're doing a fundraiser, they can put it out.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. And then the good thing is, when 22 happened, guess what? You can donate to Planned Parenthood and be a storyteller, which is awesome. I'll talk about that in a minute. But now we have so much to do. We got so much stuff for y'all to do. So there's a ton for you guys to do. So contact us. You can talk to me, Emily, Jenny. There's a scan here.
He was not able to make it, but I do have their information.
Okay.
Later.
Good. And then auto body here. Yep, auto body. Okay.
Want to say what they do?
Yeah, do you want to go?
Well, we'll do that in a little bit.
Okay, all right,
sorry.
and I'm just gonna tie it all up. Okay, so reframing. Okay. God, here. Okay. Through community building, which I just talked about, we are surrounding ourselves. This is a new thing here, right? We're going to surround ourselves with people we call friends or chosen family. I can't do my family because they're all Trumpies. So you will support these people and likewise back to not only get excited about the work that you're all doing together, but also to know when to support or encourage each other to recharge your battery or to take a rest. Through the importance of delegation, someone else will step in, not a problem. This way you can take a rest and come back, refresh, instead of completely burning out and dropping out and losing urgency like we did in 22. So that's it. That's all I have.
So I want to extend what you're talking about. I was raised Catholic as well, and so these time, talent, treasure, right? So for those who have money, donate what you can. If you have time, volunteer, learn, share, and your talents. I mean, we all have talents as individuals. We all have talents. I think one of the challenging things, and we briefly touched on, is sort of the intersectionality. Intersectionality is reality, but it also makes things a lot harder. I have however many different identities I have, and they're all important to me. And my expertise is more in healthcare, health services, and public health. So Comstock and these things are not where I can contribute, but I can contribute in understanding and my knowledge of healthcare. It's figuring out where I intersect with some of the groups. How can I contribute in a way that is not interfering with their work, that is contributing to their work, that is elevating the voices at that moment that we need. And no kidding, like you mentioned, Sue, the next election in the spring is our judicial retention election. Turnout in the spring is going to be like, so would be a good thing if we know that that's our assignment, right? We need to get our folks out again. We need the letters to the editor. We need to take care of one another. We need to get the word out. We need to do the get out the vote thing better than we did this time. Because who usually cares about not really making that connection to
That's right.
my magistrate or my, whatever state judge is on the ballot. That's where our political power happens. We have to start understanding that and seeing where that comes into play. Am I the most empathetic ear? Probably not. Can I make a hell of a lasagna? Yeah. So that's right. Like that's where my talent is going to be. And to your point, like it is community that we are going to come from different places, different identities. We have to figure out how to support one another, which also means self-care.
I am,
For a little while.
yeah, right after this.
And take care of each other, right? Checking in on each other, making sure that we're okay. And it's interesting when you're talking about the number of people, because nobody was here at like 5 people, right? There were a handful of people. Well, it's Friday night, they all have stuff to do. No, we all want to be together. So I spent 2 days in the field with it. Yesterday was my birthday. Thank you very much. And now it's time to get back up. So what do we do now? And it is, you talked about some of the ways to advocate. I also want us to touch on ways you need the help. So can you guys talk about how can people access it?
Yeah, so the Western Pennsylvania Fund for Choice is our local abortion fund. Covers all of Western Pennsylvania, and then will help anybody that is traveling to Allegheny Reproductive. I accidentally made a really good tagline when I was posting on a fund Instagram the other day. I'll repeat it. Voting is free, but abortions are really expensive. Even the cheapest abortion that we can provide at the clinic is $550, and the vast majority of our patients do qualify for funding, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Nikki, it's like 110 or 120% of the federal poverty line. 120, which is a lot of people fall outside of that, but the majority of our patients fall within it. So these are the people who are accessing abortion care that pulling together $100, pulling together $200 is really difficult for them. It's probably going to mean skipping some bills. It's probably going to mean a tight budget until the next paycheck. And they still have to pull together that much even. Yeah.
Remember that abortion care is time sensitive.
Yes.
It gets more expensive, unfortunately, the further along we are. And a lot of people, they found out at 6 weeks. Of course, they don't want to make it to 20 weeks. You know what I mean? So it is very time sensitive.
Yeah.
And that is something that people have to factor in when they are considering their finances. I not pay rent this month because I know someone else can cover that for me, but this has to happen this week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I'm not gonna pay my electric this month because, I can catch up next month,
Right.
but the abortion has to happen right now. Or there are people who end up having to put things off because pulling together $50 or $100 is just impossible. We do our best to try to intervene and interject and not let it get to that point, but it does happen where people are rescheduling just because either the financial part of it is too difficult, the logistical part of it is too difficult. I'll shout out SCAN again, which is the Access Network. People need rides to their appointments. People don't have cars, or they live in areas where there's like just little access to public transportation, if at all, or they need a ride home because they've gotten sedation at the clinic. If you have any free time at all and you have a car, you can help get people to and from. Trying to think about emotional support as well too.
I was gonna.
Yeah.
Their little race. Health City Access Network, understand an all volunteer group that provides transportation to people traveling from Pittsburgh for abortion care. We worked within a 200-mile radius of Pittsburgh. The majority of people we have given rides to are located between 30 and 120 miles away. Over the last 30 months, we have provided rides for more than 300 patients. We are always looking for more people interested in volunteering with us. We have drivers and people leaders. There is no minimum time commitment. Volunteers only sign up for jobs if and when they are able. Some people are able to do a drive every 6 months, some are able to do a drive every week. All of our volunteers are important. If you are interested in learning more about getting involved, just let me know and I can send you the link for their trainings and everything like that. And is truly, truly one of the most important volunteer groups that we rely on. We're one of the only clinics in Western PA. The other side of the state has what, 17?
A lot. Yeah.
So we are one of only two places for abortion care, and we are the only facility that provides sedation. So, and we are very adamant for safety. We do not want a patient driving home after getting that sedation, so we will cover an Uber. But an Uber to Ohio is $200 some, if not more. But that is where we rely on our drivers, our volunteer drivers, to get from their appointment. It's not outrageous, and no patient should have to bear that burden, but also understand that like someone has to, if you're able to. The fund is always able to reimburse gas card, everything like that. We understand that there is a huge burden on volunteers as well. We're asking for your time to drive deep into Ohio twice, if not what, 3-4 times sometimes. So definitely reach out to Stan. I can give you their information. And like I said, the fund is always willing to help the volunteers as well. We just need help for our patients. And it's also always important, I think.
Yeah, it can make the difference between somebody being able to get their abortion or not, is the ride to the clinic. Sometimes that is just the one piece that's missing. And it's life-changing. It can be a matter of like a person's safety. And if, you know, that one ride that you can do, turn on some music, go see some fall foliage that's going on right now. Like have just a, you know, a nice day driving and help somebody out. It's really impactful. Also the clinic escorts, we, you know, had a meeting, was it this morning or yesterday? What day was it? It was yesterday. All the days are blurring together for me, with this week. We had, you know, a meeting as a clinic yesterday morning, and our director of security really put his foot down, about interacting with the protesters for us, because they are going to feel emboldened now with this administration in office. And our clinic escorts are the people outside that are making sure patients can get in with as minimal amount of harassment as they can. If you have Saturday mornings free, I think usually get some coffee and donuts. Yeah, it can also really make a huge difference.
We share escorts with Planned Parenthood. So if you do sign up for that group, be at Planned Parenthood at our clinic. Thankfully, just because of the location of our clinic, we don't get a lot of protesters. But when we do, they are there. So
Saturday mornings are the worst.
Saturday
Yeah.
mornings are where we're like, and also just to point out, sometimes protesters are unfortunately coerced into protesting. There's a school, I don't remember what school it is, but a school towards Ohio that actually gives their students extra credit for coming to protest the clinics. So as a college student, why would you not need help with your grade? You know what I mean?
I always point out to the patients, I say, they're getting extra credit for this. Those are the kids that are failing their classes. So that is who's out there. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And like I've had one conversation with a student like that. They were like, I don't know if I really believe in being out here, but I have a C in my class. Like I need a good grade. So that's something that you always have to consider as well whenever you are volunteering. You may not be talking with someone who is against you. They just are unfortunately coerced into this position as well.
Some protesters bring their kids. There's one woman who brings her toddler and likes to shove it in people's faces, and yeah. Yeah, with the kid in the middle of winter, the kid has no coat on. Yeah. So
There's a question that we got about, well, specifically how lawsuits. Lawsuits here, you have thoughts on things that law students do?
I mean, first of all, law students could do all the things that were just talked about, and I think that's really important to remember, right? We haven't actually spent too much time talking about storytelling, but that's something I'm super bullish on right now. I think this election only proved that we are in the heart of a battle for changing hearts and minds. you change hearts and minds by telling stories, right? And so, you know, a quarter of American women have an abortion in their reproductive life. That's a lot of people, right? And it turns out that once the anti-abortion folks are confronted with the reasons why people get abortions, then they start to think about it differently, right? Because they have there's this imagination out there that people are just this like selfish, you know, they're just selfish and want to like, you know, I mean, they literally tell stories about women getting abortions so that they could fit into their genes, which is insane, right? People get abortions for all sorts of reasons. It's actually really important that all of those reasons are on display. So anyway, I think that's a hugely important thing. In terms of like more legal work, I mean, I take RAs. I write about this. You know, Debbie Brake does really important work on gender. She doesn't do repro, but she does gender stuff. I mean, we have great scholars who do LGBT scholarship, really great stuff on intersectionality with race. A lot. I mean, the faculty at this law school do really great social justice research. So getting involved in that is great. And then I'll let Sue answer any opportunities that interning at WLP or something like that.
So I want to say that as the atmosphere becomes more and more repressive, as we go into the next administration, it's really important for people to be safe to talk to. So, you know, if you have young nieces and nephews, if you have kids on your block, you have to be the person that it's safe for them to come to, and they have to know that you're safe for them to come to ask for help, because they will need help. And there might not be a lot of really obvious safe places for them to go. So become that person, become the abortion and trans care resource person. And you don't even have to know a lot. All you have to do is know how to call the people on the sheet, you know, but you have to be the person who is safe for people who don't have a connection otherwise. So I would say that is something everyone can do, whether you're a law student or not a law student. There is an influx of legal talent into the repro movement over the past couple of years, like I've never seen before. So private law firms are devoting huge amounts of resources to supporting litigation, supporting reproductive health rights and justice. Our Medicaid case has got a dozen lawyers from Troutman Pepper working on it with us, side by side with us. All of the major national cases that you see in the news, they all have private law firms at their back. So don't think that just because you're not coming to work for a public interest organization like mine, that you can get out of being part of a repro legal team. Because no matter where you are, if you want to, try to get on a team of lawyers doing work in this field. There is nothing more rewarding and scary and difficult and fun. We represent all minors who go to court to get judicial bypasses, and this is a court order that says that the minor is allowed to consent on their own to abortion care if their parent refuses to consent on their behalf, or if they are not able to ask their parent to consent. So we've done all of that representation since 2018. It's been hundreds and hundreds of young people from Pennsylvania, from Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, many different states. We have had to work very closely with scan drivers. God bless scan drivers. But we also do need lawyers to represent young people in these hearings. So we have an entire training system for that. So keep that in mind after you graduate and get your law degree. That is something that another way that you can help. We do have interns and fellows in our Western Pennsylvania office, and I think details about that are posted on our website.
There's a couple questions that we had that were given to us online about from the health aspect. People who, have conditions that are increasing risks during pregnancy, worried about their own safety or their access, and are wondering where the line is. The doctor should not. Some doctors. The best interest of whether it be, whether it be she's going to die without this care. Or, but there's also doctors. And have either walked away completely from being an OBGYN. So sadly, I don't think there's an answer. I don't think that, despite medical associations and nursing associations, healthcare at an individual level, there's no clear. No, also sort of have to know which hospitals not to, right? That have especially because you're not. So, helping women to understand places that access healthcare when they absolutely lost.
Can I jump in on that too?
Please.
Because I just wrote a 115-page law review article on this topic, so I would love to jump in. It's all about literally what does the word abortion mean, and all the ambiguities associated with it. And I'll just say that, this has become a right-wing talking point, right? Which is that the abortion bans protect miscarriage care. Abortion bans protect ectopic pregnancy care. Abortion bans protect women that are in the midst of a medical emergency. So why is it then that on a daily basis, we are confronted with the realities and the horrors of people nearly dying and actually dying, right? We have four cases now from ProPublica over the last month, because they were unable to access care that they needed that is supposed to be protected in these bans. So what's going wrong? Well, it turns out, as probably most of you in this room can gather, but I can tell you from having been pregnant multiple times, this is my lived experience, that pregnancy is exceptionally complicated and ambiguous, right? So, for instance, with miscarriage, how do you know the difference between a miscarriage and abortion? We think of these two things as opposite ends of the pole, but actually it's a Venn diagram where they intersect in multiple ways. Why? Because most miscarriages happen early in pregnancy before a fetus's heartbeat or cardiac activity has been detected. And in that case, you don't know if someone's bleeding because of a miscarriage or because 25% of healthy pregnancies involve bleeding, right? So what are doctors doing in the South and Midwest? They're waiting. They're telling women and pregnant people to go home and to bleed more, right? And they're almost bleeding out in their bathtubs, and they're coming in ambulances because of that. Because they don't know if it's a miscarriage or an abortion, and the bans will put you in prison for 10 years if you're wrong, right? I gave a lecture to the entire first year class of Pitt Medical School. And by the end, I think every single one of them was sure they were never going to go practice medicine in the South and Midwest, because they're the ones that have to interpret statutes, and they are the ones who have to decide. And that's just one example, right? Ectopic pregnancy, it actually is banned in all abortion bans unless it's explicitly excluded. And fun fact, since Dobbs, 8 states have now added into their definition of abortion that ectopic pregnancy is not included. But still, you're seeing people, when there's cardiac activity detected in an ectopic pregnancy, having to go to an abortion clinic to get care, right? Medical emergency, man, all the news stories there. How close to death does someone have to be before they are entitled to the life of the parent exception, right? We don't know. There's no answers to those questions. Pregnancy is complicated. It's not black and white. And because of that, it's impossible to legislate. And it is really sad, everything that's happening.
I mean, the other statistics I've read, infant mortality is like 7%.
Significantly in Texas. It's 13 in Texas.
Depending on some of these states, it's already atrocious.
I can speak like from the clinic level, like these, cases they come to us. In my first year working at the clinic, I was on the phone with somebody who was in the ER in West Virginia. And unfortunately, doctors who don't practice abortion care aren't trained well on abortion care. I was on the phone with this woman. She had some bleeding with her pregnancy. Her HCG levels were kind of all over the place and they couldn't really tell, if it was miscarriage, if it was ectopic pregnancy. And she put me on speaker when the doctor came in. And he's telling her all of these wrong things. He said, well, if it's an ectopic pregnancy, that's an abortion, then we still can't help you. And he said, a medication abortion will treat an ectopic pregnancy. It will not. That's wrong. And he's telling her all these wrong things. I'm on the phone. I'm like, how me, somebody who has a bachelor's degree in writing, and I just started working at this abortion clinic like 6 months ago, how do I know more about this than you do with all of these years of medical school, all these rotations and whatever? How do I know more about this than you? And I went to go tell my supervisor about it, Nikki's sister. I went to go tell her about it, and they said, oh my God, they're gonna try to kill this woman. And yeah, if she hadn't, she ended up coming up to McGee for care, traveling from West Virginia. She shouldn't have had to, but she wasn't gonna get the care at WVU's at their hospital, which if there's gonna be a good hospital in West Virginia, I would hope it's there. But no, this idiot man doctor wanted to kill her. And yeah, that was a really frustrating case. And I'm glad that she got the care that she needed and everything was okay. But and for every, person like that, we were able to help, how many people are not calling us and getting the right information and then just trusting that the doctors know what they're talking about when they don't?
I've had the experience of a doctor wanting to provide that emergency care in a medical emergency, but the pregnancy was after Pennsylvania's post 23-week cutoff. And because of the person's medical fragility, they would need an anesthesiologist nurse. They would need the doctor. Because of Pennsylvania's law, they need a second physician. They need the second physician's nurse. And they were not able to get all of those individual people together in a room, together with the legal department and the administration of the hospital, to all share knowledge about what you have to do to give an emergency abortion under the Pennsylvania Abortion Control Act and get sign off from everybody that they would be okay.
I feel like that's the same number of people in this room.
Right.
Every a council.
It's logistically impossible to do when there is an emergent situation.
Somebody's
So
dying.
it ended up being safer for the patient to not do it in Pennsylvania at all and just transfer the patient. But that's terribly dangerous.
Having to travel while I'm actively bleeding, or the fetus might already be they might have experienced demise in my body, and I'm possible sepsis. I still have to travel 5 hours, 4 hours.
If I could just bring up, because we're talking about the medical stuff, my story, and if anybody wants to talk about it, because I don't have time to talk about storytelling.
After this, we'll go into audience.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just about and I really put this in air quotes, the exceptions of rape and incest and human trafficking, but it's really rape and incest. These are not exceptions. I'm a survivor of incest from 5 until 12. And it took me 30 years to heal. And I don't cry for myself. I cry because if there is a kid or a person who has just been assaulted, and you are asking them to go in front of a police officer or a doctor, and they're not asking medical questions, they're asking legal questions to report. So you have to prove. That is the bottom line. So when these people are saying, oh, but there's exceptions, these are not exceptions. You are re-traumatizing it's as bad, okay? Because you're re-traumatizing this person. Okay, and then what we talked about before, you have to out the perpetrator, you have to do all this kind of stuff. There's this whole litany of things that you have to do, and that's not even promising that you're going to get that abortion. Okay, so 64,000. Is the,
Results, right, since the.
yeah. Yeah,
So in
60%.
2 years.
So I mean, let's just keep that, like, when people say that and the exceptions, you talk to they'll be like, oh, but there's exceptions for the life, but there's not exceptions. The vagary and the laws we talked about, there's not exceptions for the health of the mother. Okay, that's a whole other thing. And also the psychological health is not even in there. So forget that.
Yeah, mental health.
Yeah, it doesn't even count. So, that does, all that stuff, you can just slice right through those exceptions because they really aren't. They make those people who are talking about it feel morally okay. Okay.
Laws that address selective reduction or abortion to save the life of a remaining healthy fetus when an extra fetus threatens its life?
I actually will say from this paper I just wrote that actually, so selective reduction, which is, for those of you who don't know, is when people are pregnant with multiples, so twins, triplets, quadruplets, that it's been a common medical practice for when people want to reduce the pregnancy, right? To take away some of the embryos that have been planted. So historically, this has actually not been called an abortion in medicine. It's been called, euphemistically selective reduction. And so anti-abortion people have caught on to that. And so in post-Dobbs world, now that the legislators are changing the definition of abortion in anti-abortion states, they're adding language that says including selective reduction to make it clear that they want to also ban selective reduction. I would argue that that's already banned under these states' laws anyway, because selective reduction would certainly meet the definition of abortion, but they're just trying to avoid that what they view to be as a loop. We're just talking about states with bans. Obviously in Pennsylvania, so long as you're following the Abortion Control Act and you're before viability, I assume
I would say it's not an abortion. Yeah, because the definition of abortion is the use of any means to terminate the clinically diagnosable pregnancy of a woman with knowledge that use of that means will end the life of the unborn child. But you're not ending the pregnancy.
Yeah. That must be why they're adding it in. I mean,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, I suspect in a state with a ban that they're not allowing that, but
Yeah,
I'm curious to see.
I wouldn't just go and do, that it's certainly something to be careful about.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thank you all for your time. I had a similar question kind of in the theme of your latest paper, Professor Donnelly. I'm curious, like you talked about the definition of abortion, how it's complicated and it makes it hard for doctors and medical professionals to assess their risk. I'm curious if insurance companies are an additional level of like risk assessment and like confusion that we've seen or that we're going to see.
You can see our nurse who does a lot of prior authorizations back there bracing. Insurance companies make everything harder. I can at least contribute that. I don't deal with insurance too much in my position, but I can tell you they make everything harder.
Yeah, I would agree. Insurances definitely make it very hard. They have like prior auth systems where you gotta get approval for certain things. We struggle with that daily for our trans care. With regard to abortion, the tricky thing that we're noticing is, again, the prior authorizations are needed for some insurance plans.
Which is a complete abuse of what prior auths are supposed to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then one thing that we're also noticing is that insurance companies have made the distinction between elective abortion and therapeutic abortion. So if you may have abortion coverage on your plan, but if it's not elective abortion coverage, then it's not actually covered. So it has to only be therapeutic, and that's the threat to life, and stuff like that. But then also you have to have about 2 or 3 doctors have to sign off on it. And it's like levels within the insurance have to sign off on it as well, that I did not know about. That my sister who works at the clinic, she does all of the insurance stuff. And she recently just ran into that where someone did have a complication in their pregnancy and wanted to use their insurance and didn't discover. And they had to go through like 3 doctors. And then after we thought that was done, it was like, oh, no. Like now the heads of the insurance have to be kind of like involved here with some kind of decision. So insurance is definitely making it very difficult, regardless of if it's therapeutic or elective.
Nikki, can you also talk about, in the case of rape or incest, how insurance makes it an issue?
They don't cover it.
Yeah.
Needing to
because-
have multiple appointments sometimes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when we, that's a clinic we just started, we just started accepting Medicaid to kind of basically practice with what Sue was saying. We may be able to use Medicaid for all abortions coming up soon, hopefully, if that goes well. But we just started taking it for the Pennsylvania does have a rape, incest, or threat to life exception where Medicaid will cover it. And in the beginning, thankfully, it is not happening right now. Sue was very helpful with that. In the beginning, the insurances were wanting us to do prior authorizations for abortion. And so it was, in the rate, with the rape, incest, or threat to life. So patients are having to come in for multiple appointments, basically like a pre-consultation appointment, making this process so much more arduous and difficult for them. All these different trips they had to make to the clinic, wait for the prior authorizations to go through. And the point of prior authorizations, why they, exist within insurance, is to make sure that doctors are not prescribing overly expensive care when there's a cheaper alternative, or that may be, with the same result. I do not know what you can do to get the same result as an abortion that isn't an abortion. That means somebody needs to like wait to 10 days or whatever that it takes the prior authorization to go through. So thankfully with some of Sue's help, we have not had to do that whole like dance with the waiting and everything. So that's been great. But there was a minute when we were having to do that.
Some of our insurance.
Yeah.
There's some of the insurances, we still unfortunately have to be like, okay, you don't know what this is gonna look like. We'll bring you in, we'll do all of this stuff first, and then we'll send it off. And if we hear back tomorrow, we'll call you, we'll bring you in the next day after that. Don't hear anything for 7 to 10, 12. I think there was one Shelley had, we didn't hear back for like 2.5 weeks. And it was a private insurance. So it's like, now this person is further along than they wanted to in the first place. So it's like, there's always some kind of barrier with insurance. Always.
The easiest thing is going to be Medicaid coverage. Commercial insurance companies, not only like they'll say they cover something, but then there are 1,000 you have to jump, right? And they also have medical necessity criteria that all of them claim will be proprietary. You can't even read their medical necessity criteria necessary. First, you go through the hoop of finding a provider. Then you have to go through the hoop, is this even covered? And if it is covered, under what circumstances are all the administrative barriers? You're gonna have prior authorization, we'll have current reviews. Some will have retrospective reviews, so they're coming in with shoulders and we're not gonna pay you. So I think commercial insurance, it's gonna get harder because they're so afraid of whatever the administration is. They're gonna cover themselves every bit as much as providers are. They don't want to be involved. And to the point of rape and incest, they're going to consider that more than likely to be an elective abortion because it's not medically necessary under the physical necessity criteria, again, because they don't consider patient's mental health as relevant to health. Or you left. Right, but it doesn't matter because you are not necessarily going to die right at this cotton picking minute from this, right? I mean, so it's.
So to continue on that point, there's we called it back in the 80s, the morning after treatment. So if you're raped and you do go to a hospital and they do the rape kit, they can also give you this plan B, it's what I'm going to call it now. But not all Catholic hospitals are not going to do that, and they're not going to even tell you it's an option. I'm wondering how many other hospitals will adopt that rule or that even if it's like
it's definitely going to be dependent on what the states are doing, and it may be dependent on systems.
I mean, that's easy. It's taken care of. And it's, as long as you get there within, 72 hours, right?
It's not
So
100%.
Plan B is not
effective.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
so.
not 100%.
And one thing that we've run into, a lot of people take Plan B and they don't realize that if you're already ovulated, it is not going to work.
Plan B works by delaying ovulation.
Or if you're
But-
over a certain weight, or
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah, that's another thing
all
too.
these
Yeah,
things.
bunch of other things. Plan B does not work for people over, or it decreases in effectiveness for people over 180 pounds, which that is like, I feel like the average weight of like the, American woman, and yeah, the people who formulate birth control don't really take into account all the variations in the people that they're designing it for. But yeah, we give out free Plan B at the clinic. It's really easy to have on hand. If you see the auto body van around, they've got it for free to pass out. It's something good just to have on hand, because the one thing I've learned about working at the clinic is you never know. You can get a tubal ligation, you can have an IUD in. If you don't have a hysterectomy, if you have a uterus, you can't get pregnant. If you're on testosterone, if you're trans, we've seen patients up to the age of 60. I had to wag my finger at my mom. We did the reverse thing. I had to wag my finger at my mom, and I was like, "Don't you think that you can't get pregnant?"
But I do want to mention, as you said, that's the other thing that we have. The ACA, right? So the ACA, and this has been my, every time somebody says, like, abortion, I'm like, so you support the ACA, correct? Because the ACA helped to lead to lower rates of unintended pregnancy, because now women have that long-acting conception. IUDs are, after hysterectomy, they are the actual most effective, safest. However, they're damn expensive, because there's insertion and there's removal, and now for a lot of women, there's pain control because it is painful insertion a lot. So until the ACA said you have to cover at least one method of birth control from every category the FDA finds for free, it was out of reach for most. So now we have access to this, I lose access. And I think that's another thing that as we look at reproductive rights, we need to be aware that the ACA is one of the leading, right, even though there's 1.2 million exceptions they added. That's something that we need to protect as well. It is the only form to a certain extent of prevention that we have.
More audience questions, and then I just want to introduce the auto body before we wrap up. Have any questions? Anything to share?
For everyone's time, I really appreciate everything that you've all said. This question's for Sue and Greer. I'm wondering if you've thought about whether another home in the US Constitution exists for the right to abortion. I've read some scholars debate about the 9th Amendment. What do you think about that? Are there other possibilities or creative arguments? Maybe not under this court, but.
Well, Sue has successfully litigated one in our own state
Yeah.
constitution, so I'll allow her to answer that.
Well, I mean, you put your finger right on it, though. What theory can be brought before the current Supreme Court, US Supreme Court, that would cause them to say, due process clause didn't cover abortion, but I think privileges and immunities does, or I think religious freedom does, or the 9th Amendment, or any other. A really interesting read, if you have time, is the concurring opinion by Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice Wecht, where he goes through a laundry list of other kinds of claims that could support an abortion right in the US Constitution, and also is he's schooling us on what we should be arguing in our cases as well. But it's a fascinating exercise, and one that I think you'd enjoy reading. There's room for creativity. Without a different court, I don't know what kind of hope we would have that creativity could
Really scary. That a woman who was an advocate for reproductive rights was saying, I can't remember her name right now, but she was saying that the states that have like trafficking laws, that at some point that could be like a travel ban for women, because a fetus would always be being trafficked. But right now, the thought is you can't take someone under the age of 18 across state lines. Is that a?
Two states have passed a law that are, so we already have two states that have passed a law. Idaho and what's it called?
It's a Midwestern state.
Iowa has a really bad one on rape and incest.
And so it's targeted only for people who take pregnant minors across state lines, but it's the law is called an abortion trafficking law, and it makes it illegal for someone to take a pregnant minor across state lines without the parent's knowledge.
Right.
And so we have that already on the books in a few states. That's certainly going to be passed in other states. Could they expand on that and try to stop people from being able to leave the state? So I have another paper that talks about that exact question, called The New Abortion Battleground. And it's all argues that like, there's a lot of unsettled law about whether like the extent to which we have, the right to travel, would stop that exact type of law. But I mean, you have lots of little, counties in Texas that have passed laws that make it illegal for you to use the highways in their county for the purpose of going to get an abortion. So like that's our starting. Litigation over those things is also starting.
They implement it though.
They as far as I know, no one is actually implementing it.
Like how, I mean,
They're not like pulling people over. I mean, you saw a lot of ads that made the point that could happen in this, in this election, but there, as far as I know, we don't have a case where someone has been pulled over and asked to take a pregnancy test, or if you're, traveling to get it, but, they're quite alarming.
it's to scare people.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank
I just want to highlight the two orgs that I forgot to highlight. So auto body and tri-state. I'm going to do like a quick 1-minute pitch on your organization, and get some food and just network and build community.
And if anybody wants to talk to me about storytelling, natural storytelling, please come up to me. And if you're not like really into storytelling to big groups, there's many different ways to storytell. You don't have to storytell. You can storytell to one person. I just have to share this just because it was a very monumental thing. So I got into the National Storytelling Program, and I was like, hey, I share my story, all this kind of stuff. Thinking I believe in this, because it really gets people to expand their boundaries. I went into Casey's office, and I didn't think that he really I know he listened to me, and this is a guy 17 years ago that was pro-life. He really listened to me, and it moved the needle for him. But it wasn't just me, it was all the storytellers that came before me, that we finally moved, we were moving the needle for me and him. And he said to me, I've heard so many storytellers, and then I started to read and he started to learn about it. So it was the storytellers that got him to really start digging in, because he was that just like what you were saying. It does make them face themselves, it does make them sit in the room with you. So, I highly recommend it. And I have to apologize to the fact that we need to do this.
Yeah.
But it is where we are.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Katie, she, her pronouns. I'm in Planned Parenthood Club. But today I'm here on behalf of the Autonomous Body Shop, which is a grassroots mobile resource van related to reproductive health and harm reduction. So we learned about ways to organize around abortion access. We're very grassroots. We also raise money. I think Colby had said voting is free, but abortion access is not. We do try to reduce the financial barrier by raising money, for fundraising links. The other day, it cost $30,000 for someone to get an abortion. The van was able to cover that amount. Part of that amount, along with the grassroots funds, like the
And then we used our networks to raise. So immediately, like 6 hours, that like 5. So please, if you can, if you're able, donate. We also are a resource information hub for abortion and for health access. So if you have questions, how to procedures look, what can I do in Pennsylvania, outside of Pennsylvania. Serve a lot of people. We have an Instagram, we have an email. We also have a bunch of Plan B resources. Definitely not limited to just this. I just did whatever I could do about. We also business card, but yeah, we're a resource. You know, we had to do someone the other day that would be like, I need Plan B, but they were a couple hours away, so we just Venmoed them $50. That's how much that costs. Yes.
Thank you, Katie. Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm a member of Tri-State Abortion Action. We are also a very grassroots organization, and we fight to defend and expand access to abortion in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Some of the stuff that we do together is, first of all, we really like to build community. That's really important to us. One of our very first events that we ever had was a big potluck where we just talked about our experience since the Dobbs decision. So it's kind of the foundation of how we believe in organizing. It's community first. But the other things that we do is a big mix of stuff. We were phone banking for the referendum that successfully passed in Ohio. And we also were phone banking for the referendum that technically did not pass in Florida, despite over half of Floridians supporting the right to abortion. We also click into other local projects. Right now, we're thinking of ways in which we can continue to spread information about the fake clinics in the city. These are clinics that pretend to be providing healthcare, but in reality are being dishonest to the people who are reaching out for services. We also participate in fundraisers, we spread the word about those fundraisers, organize our own storytelling events. And I would love to see all of these wonderful, friendly faces at our next general meeting, which is going to be on November 20th at 6 p.m. I have a sign-up sheet here if you want to get in touch. I also created this list over here that says looking for resources. That has I think there's been a lot of name dropping of orgs throughout tonight. And if you're feeling like that sounds really cool, but I don't remember what it was called, please go and look at that sheet. I guarantee you that is on it. Local Pittsburgh organizations. And on the back side, I also have national organizations. You need information about how to access abortions, self-managed or otherwise, you'll get to the details there. Come chat with me afterwards, sign up on our email list, come hang out with us. Thank you all so much for coming. This was a very powerful event. I hope everyone had a good time. You can meet us back on campus next week, Opie and Noah, for trans awareness. Yeah, trans health for the art. Thank you. But yes, feel free to talk to any of the panelists, any of the organizations here. Thank you so much for coming. It's all about community, time to get involved. I'll do it together.
Thank you for putting all this together, all of you being here. Please eat. We have a long road ahead of us. We have an event also on Friday with a different community, which is the street artists communities and graffiti artists in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is one of the most punitive cities in the United States regarding street art. Most people don't know that, but there's a lot of street artists that are on probation and have, as conditions of probations, the inability to own pens and writing utensils. So we have that's next Friday in the creativity space in the cathedral. We will have another event later to be announced. I'm the immigration law clinic professor, so you can imagine that we're also preparing for a long fight ahead. So we'll have another event with immigrant community organizations. So we hope to see you.
Yeah.
But take food with you.
Thank you so much.
Game is sit with me, and then call it back.
Right.
No, that's. Joe, it's okay.
Yeah. So there are a lot, most, I mean, I don't want to say most, a lot of people can access medication.